What's going on, Bourbon World? My name's Chris. I'm going to be your host for today, and today's episode is a little bit different than normal. If this is your first time tuning into the channel, welcome. If not, welcome back. Today's episode is called How to Hunt Unicorn Bottles or How to Hunt Unicorn Bourbons. Either way, I don't really know what I'm going to name it quite yet, but for this one, we are going to teach you 10 tips on how to find more rare bottles of bourbon. Now, let me keep in mind that I am from the Pennsylvania area. We're going to go over Pennsylvania a little bit here and the difference between our state over other states, but make sure you stick around because if you're not from the Pennsylvania area, I've got friends from all over the country and even in Canada who are going to teach you how to find unicorn bottles. Let's get into it. Cheers. So here's the deal. Here's my two unicorn bottles. These are what I would consider myself my biggest unicorns. I have the Weller Foolproof and I have the Elmer T. Lee. Now these bottles are something that I can't get my hands on here in Pennsylvania, at least not very easily, but I'm going to tell you how you can get your hands on these. But stick around to the end because I'm going to have friends invited from all over the country to teach you how to get these bottles in your area. Now Elmer T. Lee and Weller Foolproof both popped up here in Pennsylvania, but if you don't know how to find them, this is going to be the episode for you. Tip number one, and these aren't in any particular order. This isn't the best way versus the worst way. These are just the 10 things that I recommend that you have to do before you're going to be able to find bottles like this. Number one is no release dates. Now you need to know what you're searching for and when it's coming out. For example, if you're looking for Stag Junior in the middle of March, you're probably not going to find it because it's at the end of its release date. They didn't release it yet. So if you're looking for it in March, it's probably already gone by batch 15 and batch 16 hasn't quite come out yet. So if you don't know release dates, then you're not going to be able to know exactly what you're looking for and when to look for it. Now the best source that I've found for release dates is called breakingbourbon.com. If you just Google Breaking Bourbon, if you haven't heard of this site, it is absolutely fantastic. It's a must-have in your arsenal when it comes to hunting bourbons. They break it down monthly on what's supposed to come out. They update it regularly. I think they just updated it a week ago on what already dropped, what dropped when, what dropped where, and what's dropping next. So if you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know when you're looking for it, you're never going to be able to find these bottles. And this is something that I didn't know when I first got into bourbon. When I first started hunting bourbon, I was just going out and I said, do you have any Stag Junior? Do you have any Stag Junior? Yo, do you have any Stag Junior? Calling stores. Do you have any Stag Junior? They're like, no, we don't have any Stag Junior. We haven't had any Stag Junior for 9 months. It doesn't come out for another 3 months. Stop calling. So if you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what you want, and you don't know when it's dropping, check out Breaking Bourbon for their timeline of when all of these drop. Let's get into number two. So tip number two is very easy yet very effective, and that is to join a Facebook group. Now, if you don't have Facebook, there's other sources to use as well. I run a Discord group called Bourbon of the Week where you can come chat with people from all over the country about bourbon, where it's dropping and when it's dropping, and that gives you an advantage over other people who don't have these resources. You know, if you're part of a group such as I am called PA Bourbon Squad on Facebook, I now have 5,000 people at my disposal telling me when people are dropping things, where they're dropping. If they're close to Ohio from the Pittsburgh area, they're going to Ohio and searching for things. If they're like me and they're from the Philadelphia area and they go over to Jersey and they tell you that there's an Elmer T. Lee sitting in a buy right for $70, guess who gets there the next day to pick that up before they even open, and nobody even knew about it because they weren't part of this group. So Facebook groups, PA Bourbon Squad, if you're in Pennsylvania, is a great one to join. My Discord, which I'll link down below, is a great source to have. Meet some people, try and find some bottles, join some social medias, and I guarantee you're going to have the advantage over a lot of other people in your area. That's tip number two. Let's switch it over to the Elmer T. Lee. Now, tip number three is a pretty obvious one, but I didn't even think about it until about 6 months into my hunt on a lot of these bourbons. Know your delivery days. If you have a local store, so let me tell you a little bit here about Pennsylvania. We have one liquor store. It's called Fine Wine and Good Spirits. That is the only place that you can buy liquor outside of an actual distillery. If you want to buy the distillery's distilled liquor, you can go there and buy their rum, their gin, their liquor, anything that they have. But otherwise, you must go through Fine Wine and Good Spirits to buy your liquor. So if you know the delivery days of your local shop, you're going to want to show up on delivery days. In my particular area, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. So every Tuesday I show up and I look and I see what came in on the truck that day. Now, the tough part about this is sometimes the delivery is there at 9 a.m. Sometimes the delivery comes at 1 p.m. A lot of us have jobs. By 5 o'clock, the good stuff is gone on most days, especially when they're dropping things like Blanton's, E.H. Taylor, or anything else from Buffalo Trace. Now, this doesn't bring in a lot of unicorns per se, because Weller Foolproof and Elmer T. Lee, like I mentioned before, they drop online, and we're going to get to that in a second. But know your delivery days. Walk into your local store, say, hey, just wanted to know, when do you guys get deliveries for your liquor? They'll usually tell you. A lot of people are very friendly, and they'll tell you when your delivery days are, and then you show up on those days, and that's when you're going to find your rare bottles, because most of them don't last past that day. If something drops at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, it's gone by 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock whenever your local liquor store closes. Know your delivery days, know your local people, get involved that way. Otherwise, you might miss out on a bottle or two. So tip number 4, while it's very easy to do, it's extremely important, especially here in Pennsylvania. Now, if you have an online liquor store, you are going to want to sign up for email notifications. Now, a lot of you in Pennsylvania know that even when you're signed up for the email notifications, something drops at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday, you don't get that email until 1:16. Guess what? It's gone. But without that email notification, you have no chance of knowing about it at all. You're sitting there, you're clicking refresh all day. At 1:59, you have a meeting, and guess what? 2 o'clock is when that bourbon drops. Maybe you get the email notification on your phone at 2:01, you hop out of the meeting, there's an emergency, you gotta go, another call, you're online, and you're buying your favorite bottle of bourbon that you've never seen before. Now, this is tough. Again, I get bots all the time on our website that buy this stuff up instantly. So you gotta be better than the bots, you gotta be disciplined, and you gotta be checking the website, which leads us right into tip number 5, which is watch for online drops. This doesn't just go for Pennsylvania, although again, I am speaking mainly to them. There's a lot of sites that drop things online. You can go online and just Google. Now, a lot of this stuff is going to be secondary prices. We're lucky enough here in Pennsylvania that we almost exclusively pay MSRP for our bottles. There are a few that are overpriced, such as this Elijah Craig 18 year that I got for $200 at MSRPs in that $130 to $140 range. But at the same time, most of our stuff, Weller 12 just dropped on there the other week, MSRP. Elmer T. Lee dropped on there the other week, MSRP. I missed out on both of them because I was already lucky enough to have an Elmer T. Lee here because of the Facebook groups that I talked about earlier. So make sure you're checking your notifications, make sure you have email notifications turned on, and make sure you're stalking that website for online drops. Here in Pennsylvania, it appears to be Wednesdays when they drop things, maybe every third Wednesday of the month. If I'm going to give you a hint, I don't want you guys to beat me too much, but at the same time, I do want you to have some information. So join PA Bourbon Squad if you're from Pennsylvania, join your local Facebook group, find out about email notifications, make sure you turn them on, and then watch the online drops. That's 2 hints for 1 right there. So make sure you do both. Tip number 6 is a very easy one. You got to get out of your state. I promise you, you might think you have the best state when it comes to bourbon. I can tell you right now, Pennsylvania has one of the worst. While the MSRP thing is great, if you don't have access to the bottles, what's the point? Russell's Reserve 13 has been sitting on our website as coming soon for about 2 months now. And guess what? People have had it, people have reviewed it, people have drank it, people have loved it, people have finished their bottles, and I haven't even had a chance to buy it yet. But you know who did? The people in New Jersey got a couple of cases before. The people in Delaware definitely already got their hands on it. New York has some bottles. Anywhere that you go outside of a liquor-controlled state is going to have a little bit more access quicker to some of the bottles that you're hunting for. Now, the different thing about this is you might have to pay a little bit more money for them. And while that's kind of a here nor there, it's up to you. Are you willing to pay a little bit more than MSRP to have access to it? Or would you rather pay MSRP only? I can tell you right now, I paid $60 for this bottle of Elmer T. Lee. I think it MSRP's for what, 35 or 40? But if you ever see this on the shelf for $500, you know that $60 isn't a bad ask for it. And a unicorn bottle that I'll never see here in Pennsylvania because maybe I didn't beat the bots that day, $60 isn't a bad ask for this. So leave your state. If you're from Philadelphia, go to New Jersey, go down to Delaware, check things out. Not only are they going to have unicorn bottles there sometimes for a little bit more than MSRP, they're going to have bottles that you just can't get here in Pennsylvania. George Dickel doesn't come here to Pennsylvania. Now, you can love or hate on Dickel all you want, but it's not here. We don't get access to it. But in New Jersey, it's all over the shelves down there. So get out of your state, do a little bit of traveling, have fun, make a day of it, and learn a little bit more about outside of your state where the bourbon is so you can go buy it. That's tip number 6. Cheers. And last but not least for me, for tip number 7 is going to be befriend your local shop. Now, this does not have anything to do with Pennsylvania because here in Pennsylvania, you can be best friends with the liquor store owner, Most of the time, they don't either know when things are going to drop, they just get a lot of these allocated bottles on delivery, or two, if they do, they're not going to tell you just because it's in their best interest to keep other customers happy rather than just you, because Pennsylvania, they're making their money one way or another. It's controlled by the state. The website's run by 1992 data and technology. I can promise you that it will definitely help to be nice to them. Go in, find your delivery days, don't be a dick, but at the same time, going in there and asking them to hold bottles for you or anything like that isn't going to work. But what I will tell you, in non-liquor control states, or even in other liquor controlled states where it's not run by the actual individual of the state, so like people can still own their own stores, it's just regulated by the state, befriending your local manager is the number one tip that I've gotten when reaching out to other people. They say you gotta just go in there, talk to the manager, buy from them every time. Maybe this one bottle is $5 over MSRP. Go in there and buy that bottle if it's your favorite bottle. Don't argue with them about the $5 because the guy down the street has it. Neither of them are going to call you. If you keep showing up, you keep showing your face, you keep making small talk, you befriend these local managers, you start getting phone calls, you start getting text messages. Things like that are really going to go a long way to finding bourbons like these that you can't always find, because without those people, you got nothing. Be a nice guy. Befriend the manager at your local store. Figure out when the bourbons are coming and hope that they give you a call next time they do. So those are my 7 tips, but I know what you're thinking. Chris, you promised me 10 tips on how to find unicorn bottles, and I'm going to give you 3 more, but I want to make sure we get the whole country covered, and even Canada. But first, we're going to throw it over to Phil and Julie at the Bourbon Van. If you don't know about these two, make sure you check them out. Like I said, at the Bourbon Van on YouTube, on Instagram. If you love travel, if you love bourbon, if you love learning things about whiskey that I never thought I would ever know, Phil and Julie are the two that you want to talk to. And they're going to give us a little bit about where they're from, how they hunt bourbon, and maybe they'll show us a nice picture or two of some scenic routes they take, because the Bourbon Van travels the whole country. Phil and Julie?
Hi, I'm Phil from the Bourbon Van, and when it comes to unicorn bottles, there's a couple things that we like to keep in mind. Number one is time. You have to know when that delivery is due at your favorite local liquor store, because if you're not one of the first ones there, chances are real good you're not going to find one of those bottles. And the other thing is, when you go in, don't just ask for your Henry McKenna single barrel or whatever it happens to be that you're looking for, and if they don't have it, walk out, because the way to build rapport with your liquor store is not just to go in and say hello and ask for something and then leave. You'll find that the serious collectors, the people that are getting these bottles offered to them, have been spending a lot of money there. This is not a cheap hobby. So consider exactly how much you're willing to spend to build that relationship with your liquor store so that they do offer you those really fancy bottles or unique bottles when you come in. And secondly, be willing to leave your comfort zone to find that bottle. We've driven up to 350 miles to find a bottle before. It's easier said than done a lot of times to just take a road trip to find a whiskey, but you can order things online. If you're in the city, sometimes you need to go to the suburbs. If you're in the suburbs, sometimes you need to go to that rural area. If it's not showing for you, and we get this comment on our videos all the time, that's not available in my area, sometimes you have to leave your area and find that bottle of whiskey. Like I said, easier said than done, but the payoff can be huge.
Up next, we're going to go with Jason and Brandy from the Black Bourbon Family, another great YouTube channel that if you're not following, you are missing out. Not only are they going to give us great bourbon content, but Jason's going to give you some cigar picks, and it's one of the reasons that I got into cigars. So, Jason, Brandy, where are you from and what do you got for us?
Thanks, Chris. Hey, everyone. I'm Jason.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're the Black Bourbon Family. So for us, with hunting and finding unicorn bottles like these, there are a couple of methods that we've used. Number one, we just go to a lot of stores and see what type of inventory they have. See what they have on the shelves will kind of give you a good idea what they may have in the back. In Chicago, we have Benny's. They're a large store that sells all types of alcohol, including good bourbon. They have some things in a glass case at reasonable prices, but then they have things in the back too. So I think, to be honest with you, you have to form good relationships. Talking to people and having a genuine love of bourbon and wanting to know more about bourbon, understanding all the different facets of it. And I think once people see that you're really into bourbon and not just trying to buy it so that you can flip it and sell it or whatever, or just put it in the on the shelves and not ever open it, which to me is the worst. Try your bourbon. I think, but once you develop those relationships, you'll start having access to good bourbon like these.
Yeah, and don't forget about your mom and pop stores.
That's right. And if you're close to the Northwest Indiana border between Chicago and Indiana, check out Nick's Liquors. They have several stores in the Hammond and Maryville area. You'll find some good things on the shelves and behind the counter. And again, form those relationships. You may be able to get something that no one knows they even have. All right, Chris. Hopefully that helps everyone. Back to you.
Jason and Brandy, thank you for that. That is a great tip. I am going to make sure I use that myself. And the next time the Phillies are playing the White Sox, we got to get to a game together. Make sure you check out the Black Bourbon family on Instagram and YouTube. They've got great content that you're not going to want to miss. And last but certainly not least, we have our friend from the north. His name is John. He's with Whiskey Neighbor. Make sure you check him out again on Instagram and YouTube. Great content. And if you're looking for just bourbon content, he covers it all from bourbon to whiskey and everything in between. So John, where are you from and what's your tip for us today?
Thanks, Chris. Hunting for unicorns, or at least unusual whiskey, is like a full-time job, and I love it. My tip is to say, I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, and we're in a semi-controlled, so private stores, but still has to go through an Alberta Liquor Control Board for the province, but it creates some pretty interesting older stock. And what I want to say is don't be afraid to get off the beaten path. So I've got a couple of things here that are unicorn or unique. First, this is a Gervin. It's like an 11-year-old single cask, 51%. Found it in a town of 6,000 people, small liquor store, for a crazy steal. This one here, this Benria Curiositas, this is long out of production. Found it really recently downtown Edmonton at kind of an offbeat liquor store that I certainly wouldn't frequent unless I was just hunting around for whiskey, and I'm excited to be trying that soon. And of course, one of the few probably true unicorns that I found several years after Elijah Craig 12 went out. Caught a rumor that it was out at basically a beach resort, so it's really not even a town. People just go there for holiday. Drove out there with my wife, and sure enough, on the shelf of this almost one room, super tiny liquor store was a number of these Elijah Craig 12-year-olds. So don't be afraid to get out, to drive around, make a day of it. I have done that with my wife, and you know what? Sometimes good things come. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for that, John. You have information, an array of information that I didn't even know I needed to know. This guy knows everything about all different kinds of whiskey, not just bourbon. So make sure you check him out. Whiskey Neighbor on YouTube, on Instagram. Go follow him. You're not going to be disappointed. I can promise you that. I want to thank Phil and Julie, Jason and Brandy and John for joining me today. But that's going to be it. That's our 10 tips and tricks on how you can find unicorn bottles of bourbon. If you learned something today, make sure you click that like button. Make sure you click that subscribe button so we can keep growing this channel and I can keep bringing you content like this. But in the meantime, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Bourbon of the Week. We do giveaways all the time on there. I'm dropping new information and new episodes on that all the time. Bourbon of the Week on Instagram. If you want to, come support me on Patreon. I got a baby girl on the way, so it's going to be a little bit harder in the future to buy some of these bottles of bourbon that I'm getting. But with your help on Patreon, I can keep up this channel the way that it's going. Come chat with me on Discord, like I mentioned before. A great tip for how you can find out about bottles of bourbon in your area. The link's down below. But that's going to be it for today. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay drinking. Cheers, y'all. Woo! 114 proof.